So, as I've showed in the past, the space shuttle footage we've all seen actually comes from the U-2 spy plane. Link in the description if you haven't seen that video. But we're going to dig a little bit deeper here today regarding the U-2 plane and its connection with space. Just have a quick look at here, Wiki Space Shuttle, just to show you some timelines. The first ever space shuttle launch was in 1981, okay? First flight, 1981, okay? Bear with me. We come here, NASA and their U-2 spy planes. They first acquired them in 71 and then updated them in guess what year? You got it. NASA acquired its first ER-2 aircraft in 81 and a second in 89. So the same year that NASA had their first launch with the space shuttle was the year they got the upgraded, newer U-2 spy plane in the form of the ER-2. Newer airframe, bigger wings to go a bit higher, perfect for getting that nice bit of supposed space footage through a curved lens at high altitude. And as I've previously shown, that's exactly what they've done, as I compared space shuttle imagery with James May in the U-2 spy plane. And of course the timelines again give this away. Bear with me. Here's one of NASA's ER-2s or U-2 spy planes, showing the options available, the modular payloads. And of course we know it's provided footage the same that is sighted supposedly from space. And let's just refresh our memories of what that is. Here we're going to flip to a footage, an image I've blended from James May in the spy plane, sighted as curvature, and an image sighted from the space shuttle, again sighted as curvature. And here they are, U-2 James May spy plane and the space shuttle. 170 to 80,000, well, 170,000 feet up. The other one's 190 miles up, supposedly. It's exactly the same amount of supposed curvature. So it's optical and not physical. And that's why NASA have these U-2 spy planes. So if that wasn't bad enough, the U-2 spy plane exposing itself and NASA, courtesy of James May and his supposed curvature observation at 70,000 feet, which turns out to be exactly the same amount of curve the space shuttle views. And as we're about to see here, is exactly the same amount of curvature that is sighted from the International Space Station. Again, we'll do another comparison here, starting with James May's U-2, then blended with footage from the International Space Station. And surprise, surprise, here's the U-2, and here comes the ISS. It's exactly the same amount of curvature. Again, proving any curve is optical and not physical, and that all this footage is originated from NASA's high altitude spy planes. And we love James May for that. Thank you, James. So now we've established most of the space footage we see has come from high altitude planes, most likely the U-2 spy plane here. We've shown that several instances, U-2 compared to the space shuttle, U-2 compared to the ISS. Kind of gives the game away, the results of those blending processes there, guys. So what are we actually seeing then when we look up at the sky? We know the footage comes from high altitude planes. What are we actually seeing? I've done a video that I touched on potentially early tests with the SR-71, and I discussed the potential of holographic technology. I mean, could the U-2 be responsible for what we see in the sky? What I've seen myself certainly doesn't look like it's travelling at 17,500 miles an hour. Other people have shown footage that it looks a bit quicker. Perhaps they're using several different high altitude planes here. But could the U-2 plane be partly responsible for what we see in the sky? Again, using holographic technology. I mean, if I blend the shape of the International Space Station and do an overlay with the shape of the U-2 spy plane, as I'm about to show you, there is a fit there. And of course, if you've got the technology to project here, then that could well be what we're seeing in the sky. Let's have a quick look. The ISS, and we're blending it into the U2. Coming back to the ISS, and then blending to the U2. The main body shape is obviously very similar. And then potentially you could project the rest of the International Space Station from the body, the wings of the U2. Interesting. Now we're going to look at a couple of examples of holographic technology. First one. Pretty impressive, to say the least. And the second clip.
Holograms you can hold. This holographic gauntlet is the weapon that Dan will be using.
So there's technology there to project and potentially do this job of a high altitude plane, using this kind of technology to potentially project itself and give the appearance of what we know as the ISS. And we've all seen imagery like this, stuff of the ISS that almost does look holographic. Very strange. So, could the U2 be responsible for what we see in the sky and know as the ISS when we see things fly overby? Potentially, maybe there's a couple of different planes, faster ones. I reckon the SR-71 that NASA used in the late 90s was test runs and for what we actually now see in the sky. That is supposedly the ISS, but we know better. Because otherwise we wouldn't have to see the space pantomime, harness failures, hairspray fetishes, and all that stuff. We would never have to deal with that. So it's clearly not what is going on in the sky, is what is presented to us on the television. Otherwise we wouldn't have all those constant fails. But with the holographic technology around now, and no doubt has been around for quite some time, that could quite possibly be what's going on up in the sky. Here you can see an ISS pass over. See it coming from the right hand corner there above the house. Is that really doing 17,500 miles an hour? Or could that be a U2 high altitude spy plane? Perhaps NASA used several different types of planes. Some a little bit faster, something like the SR-71, and some like the U2, which we know provides the footage that is sighted supposedly from space. We know the holographic technology is there, we've seen it. And we know the military are way ahead of the mainstream as far as tech is concerned. So I think it's more than likely what we see up in the sky is a high altitude plane, more than likely with some kind of projection tech to fool the masses into thinking there's some tin can hurtling around a ball, when there's not. It's just a high altitude plane that's backed up by silly space pantomime, silly stories, CGI and firework displays. That's it, that's your space.